We're continuing now with chapter 16, which is strategic elements of competitive advantage. And within this chapter, we're also going to discuss a case related to IKEA. So as far as obviously the ability of a firm to create a really strong competitive advantage is a key part of our success. So it's something that is at the center of creating a good business and marketing strategy. There are a couple of tools that can help us really understand, evaluate the market in which we operate and how can we achieve such strategic advantage. So specifically, one of the most famous model is the so-called 5 forces model developed by Michael Porter. So according to him, there are 5 forces that we need to evaluate in order to understand our current strategic position, but also in order to develop our best strategy going forward. So the first force we need to evaluate is the threat of new entrants. So this is, as a company, of course, we prefer not to have, basically we want the entry of new entrants to be more difficult. And we try to create barriers to entry because if there are constant new entrants, this puts us in a situation of constant pressure on prices and profitability, as well as pressure to innovate. So when we evaluate the market, this is the first thing we do. We evaluate how easy it is for new entrants to enter. And ideally, we want from here, if we think that there's a very big threat of new entrants, we would most probably develop some barriers to entry. Such barriers to entry could be economies of scale. So economies of scale refers to the fact that when we are when we're producing in big quantities, when we're servicing big markets with big quantities, we can actually achieve what we call economies of scale, which means lower per unit product costs. And this is one of the main ways in which we can keep barriers to entry, because a new entrant would always have smaller volume, which means higher unit costs. So this is one of the most effective ways we could potentially keep competition out. The other, also very important, is product differentiation. So this relates to the extent to which a product is perceived to be unique or different from competitors. The bigger the number of substitutes, the bigger number of similar products, the more difficult it is. So the more differentiated our product is, the less probable is that anybody would contest our marketplace. Another barrier to entry are capital requirements. So this is the money that we need, the total investment we need as far as manufacturing, research and development, advertising, and so on. And also the switching costs. So in some cases with some products, it's very difficult to switch from one product to another. It's very expensive. So this in itself becomes a barrier to entry. Other barriers to entry include distribution channels. So sometimes we can actually the distribution channels themselves cannot hold bigger capacity, or maybe we have established contracts and relationships with the main distributors, which make it difficult for new entrants. Government policies could be barriers to entry. So sometimes big organizations actually do lobby the government in order to create such restrictions and to restrict competitive entry. Cost advantages we already said, so they're mainly a result of economies of scale. And also another barrier to entry is how would the market itself react to increased competition. So in some cases, this also acts as a barrier to entry. The second force, according to Porter, is threat of substitute products. So as we said, this is connected to this differentiation we spoke about. So if it's very easy for customers to switch from one product to another. This becomes a huge threat to us. And what we need to understand also is that high prices in themselves could be the reason buyers are considering substitute products. So one of the ways in which we ensure that we are not under this threat is not only differentiating our products, but even if we're very differentiated and very special, we still sell it. We don't abuse that market position by putting very high prices because we're offering something very special. We sell it at prices that make it difficult for competitors to compete. So we don't just, if we just put very high prices because we can, we run the risk of competitor being motivated by that, and we could lose our customers. The third force of Porter is bargaining power of buyers. So here when we say buyers, we don't mean consumers. We mean the people, the companies, the manufacturers, retailers who are buying the products from us. Whoever they are, buyers always try to push the price down. So how strong they are then has a huge influence on our ability to, on our profitability, basically ability to charge higher prices. Now buyers have leverage over suppliers, so basically they are stronger when they purchase in large quantities. So when they purchase large quantities from us, they always push the price down or request other better conditions. Also when the products are commodities, because commodities as a rule, so things like petrol, wheat, sugar, coffee, so they are considered undifferentiated or standard, especially for example, petrol. We don't differentiate where the petrol is coming from. We consider it a standard product. Also, they would have high leverage if the product represents significant portion of buyer's costs, and when the buyer is willing and able to achieve backward integration. So these are also two important aspects. We've given here an example of a case in which Walmart exercised its buying power by refusing to stock CDs bearing parental advisory stickers. And specifically, we're giving an example of musicians who had to change their lyrics because they realized that the main place where Walmart is the main place where the CDs are being bought. So not being able to include their CDs on Walmart would have been detrimental to them. So again, this is a way the buyer, in this case Walmart, can exercise power over a supplier. The fourth force is the bargaining power of suppliers. So if suppliers have leverage, they can raise prices high enough to affect the profitability of their customers. They can also refuse to work with us in favor of a competitor. So leverage, so they have leverage when suppliers are large and few in number. So in other words, the interest is dependent on just a few sources of suppliers. When the supplier's products are really critical inputs, or a very highly differentiated. Also, when it's very difficult to switch from one supplier to another, few substitutes exist. And if suppliers are willing and able to develop and sell product themselves, so that's another possibility. The last force is the rivalry among competitors. So the availability of competitors and the number of competitors, the size and number of competitors are all important aspects. Usually, for example, price competition has positive aspects because it forces companies to become more effective, more productive, in general to rationalize costs. But it becomes negative if companies are forced to reduce prices to a level that could make the company completely not profitable. So we cannot say price competition is always bad. No, it has levels until which it's positive and levels below which it becomes negative. Also, we need here to consider that some industries have very high fixed costs, and in order to survive, they need to operate at full capacity. Also, a problem is with lack of differentiation or absence of switching costs. When buyers treat products as commodities, in other words, as standardized, undifferentiated products, that's another way also for price and profits to go down, because buyers can go to anybody, or at least they don't have the feeling that anything we offer is different. Yeah, also, it really depends on what kind of competitors we have on the market. So sometimes we have companies that focus on kind of a short-term achieving success in some way, for example, increasing market share in the short run, and they're willing to destabilize the whole market by accepting below average profit margins. So they usually would, for example, we studied predatory pricing. This is one way in which, if there are such predators on the market, they can destabilize the whole market. So when we are evaluating rivalry, we need to differentiate between this healthy and unhealthy aspects of competition. When we So how is competitive advantage achieved? What we're saying here is achieved when there's a match between a firm's distinctive competencies and the factors critical for success within its industry. So driven from that, there's two main ways in achieving competitive advantage. One is for using generic strategies and also strategic intent. We have 4 types of each, which we're going to look at now. The generic strategies for creating competitive advantage could be 4 different types, and they depend on how narrow or broad our scope of activities are, and also how much we focus on cost versus differentiation. So narrow scope means we're more working on more niche markets. Broad scope, the more it goes higher, it's about mass markets. And cost focus means we're trying to be a cost leader, so to offer the lowest, the product at the best price. While differentiation focus is we're trying to offer a product that's very clearly differentiated from competitors in a way that they're willing to pay higher price. So if we're not cost leaders, we need to be absolutely sure customers have a reason to pay us more. So we call this cost focus. Cost focus is when we have more niche markets and we are having a strategy to provide low cost. And cost leadership is when we are working on a more mass market and we're really achieving the cheapest price. Differentiation focus is again when we are on a narrow market, so more niche market, and differentiation is the strategy when we are on a more broad scope market. So if we are in a position of cost leadership, we can achieve this lowest cost. We need to have definitely economies of scale. We need to be the most efficient, the most productive player on the market, and we need to have the largest market share. Otherwise, we cannot achieve such cost leadership. If our broad market strategy is differentiation, as I said, there needs to be some very big uniqueness that allows us to effectively defend our market position. Yeah, so we would have premium prices, but we need to really be able to defend them. Then we have narrow market strategy focus differentiation. So this is an example of a product that's really, it's a high-end audio equipment. You see the price tag, I mean, it's very expensive. Very few people would be willing to pay this kind of price for a stereo amplifier. So we can command a very high price, good profit margin, but quite small market. And last, the narrow market strategy cost focus. Here, the central issue we have is sustainability. If this works, if our competitors are very broadly oriented to a broad market segment, and we can really focus on a small market segment and justify and achieve advantage there. But if competitors define the segment more narrowly than us, then this is not a sustainable strategy. Here we have a quote specifically related to how we create competitive advantage vis-a-vis strategic intent. According to Gary Hamel, few competitive advantages are long-lasting. This didn't used to be like that in the past. In the past, sometimes companies could keep their competitive advantage for 20, 30, sometimes 50 years or more. This is very difficult today. With the globalized world we live in, there's a constant pressure on companies. So when they think of competitive advantage, they need to, they shouldn't think of it as something we develop and then we stay on it, but they should look at it as a constant process of creating new advantages. So it's a, basically, according to Gary Hamel, the essence here of the strategy is in creating tomorrow's competitive advantage faster than competitors. So it's not important what we have today. We need to be one step ahead, comparing faster than competitors tomorrow's competitive advantage. So an organization's capacity to improve existing skills and learn new ones then becomes the most defensible competitive advantage at all. So there are a few additional aspects of how we can do that. One of the possibilities is to use the continuous improvement principles of Deming. He introduced that, and for many years he wasn't really followed, and it wasn't implemented in Western markets. But I think his principles became first introduced by Toyota, who really revolutionized a lot of things in the end of last century, and we continue to study their contribution. So they really focused on this continuous improvement. Like the traditional Western way of doing things is, okay, we have this project for improvement, it has beginning and end, and once we finish it, we think we're done. Well, here the focus has become on everyday improvement. We're constantly looking. Today we realize something can be done better. We start doing it. We start working on doing it better. So we don't wait to realize we've lost competitive advantage. We're constantly innovating. That's why we're saying we're building layers of advantage, searching for loose bricks, so searching constantly for what could be done better, completely changing the rules of engagement, the way we do the whole game of the whole way of working. And absolutely involves collaborating. So it's not a top-down approach, it's traditional innovation, like the way we used to do innovation. It's a collaborative effort, and innovation and continuous improvement has to come from all sides of the company. Yeah, so it's not about, also when we talk about layers of advantage, it's not about one competitive advantage. It's about layers of advantages on top of each other. And yes, some of them probably would be stronger than others, but really it's, you cannot survive just on building one competitive advantage and staying there. So this searching for loose bricks, as I said, it's really about constantly searching for opportunities to improve and creating these defensive walls against competitors. They could be different so they could be focused on particular market segments or focused on a geographical area. So there are different ways of achieving that. When we talk about changing the rules of engagement or the whole game, you have here a few examples, but it's really about refusing to play according to the rules set by industry leaders and coming with a completely new way of doing things. So for example, Xerox started leasing their machines, while Canon was just selling them. So this can be turned immediately. It's disrupting the market. It's addressing a need of customers, because especially complex machines are very expensive. So it addressed the needs of customers to be able to use such machines at lower monthly cost, and it became a competitive advantage. Collaborating is not just internally in the company, so both aspects are important. Really engaging everybody in the company in the innovation and improvements, but also collaborating with external partners. That has become really a cornerstone also for achieving competitive advantage. Now, we also need to understand the difference between global competition and so global competitive advantage and national competitive advantage. So global competition occurs when a firm takes a global view on competition and sets about maximizing profits. The effect is beneficial to consumers because prices generally fall as a result of global competition. However, while creating value for consumers, it may destroy the potential for jobs and profit. So this is not, it sounds like a good strategy, but in some cases it's not the right one. So what are some factor conditions we need to consider? One is human resources. So what kind of people are available? What is the quality level of education and work ethic and so on? What physical resources we need and what are available? What knowledge resources are needed and available? what capital resources are needed and available, and what infrastructure resources are needed and available. So all these aspects would impact our ability to create competitive advantage and sustain it on specific markets. What we need also to consider, so when we are looking to achieve competitive advantage locally, what we need also to understand is the composition of home demand and the size and pattern of growth of home demand. So both of these things would be a great determinants of our national of our strategy. Also, how rapid is the home market growth? If we can, so that would determine how fast we can invest and adopt new technology and build faster, better, more efficient facilities. Also, whether products are being pushed or pulled. Do a nation's people and businesses go abroad and then demand the nation's product and services in those second economies? So all these are important aspects of we can't build a really good competitive advantage if we don't understand that. We also need to understand not just our industry and the demand in our industry, but how different industries relate to each other and support each other. So there are different ways in which we can develop competitive advantage by how we coordinate, how we collaborate with suppliers in a ways that optimize the value chain. So for example, we're giving you here example that non-US sales of PCs from Hewlett-Packard, Lenovo, Dell, and Acer have bolstered demand for software from Microsoft. So it's not enough to just understand the demand for our products directly we can create, but also how we can create demand through this collaborative efforts. So we're going to look at now the firm's strategy, structure, and rivalry. So first, domestic rivalry in a single national market is a powerful influence on competitive advantage. The absence of significant domestic rivalry can lead to complacencies in the home firms and eventually cause them to become non-competitive in the world markets. I mean, this is the result of the kind of healthy aspects of competition, which force innovation, force efficiency. So when we don't have them, we are more complacent to change. As a result, we lose competitiveness as a whole. And we're very vulnerable to new competitors. Also, differences in management styles, organizational skills, and strategic perspectives can also create advantages or disadvantages for firms competing in different types of industries. We need also to consider what is called here chance events. So these are things that happen beyond our control, beyond even governments and industries. So they happen and they create major discontinuities. So basically they disrupt the way we do things. This could be war, like the way we have now war, which completely changes business for many companies. It could be major technological breakthroughs, also really disruptive technologies, new ways of doing things. It could be exchange rate swings, so major fluctuations in exchange rates also could be disruptors, and also price fluctuation of inputs like major commodities like oil, for example. Again, something we see currently, how disruption due to war in the oil markets is completely changing a lot of aspects of how we do business. Government is also an influence on determinants by virtue of its role as a consumer, policymaker, and commerce regulator. So they're the ones who change legislation. They also, as consumer of many services, and they influence businesses through government expenditure. Now, when we talk about competitive advantages, there are certain trends today. As I said, we cannot rely as we could do in the past on developing a competitive advantage and then kind of staying there. So we have today the business environment is unstable, unpredictable. So we have very short product life cycles, short product design cycles, constantly changing new technologies, and globalization. So these are the factors that make markets really dynamic and require this constant upgrade and layering of competitive advantages we were talking about. So as a result of this, we have constant escalation and acceleration of competitive forces, which means that very few things are truly sustainable. So we need to be completely dynamic, constantly changing, constantly innovating, constantly introducing new products, new technologies, and being willing to disrupt ourselves. So being willing to disrupt ourselves, even if we have very profitable current operations, but if we see that there is some tendency, if we don't disrupt ourselves and introduce it, then somebody else will introduce it. So that's probably the most difficult part, because when we have something going successful, we usually want to think that we can have more of it. But today, this is not enough. We need to be able to disrupt ourselves and even the most successful strategies we have. We can say that in today's market, we have hyper competition to levels that we've never had in the past. And this is primarily a result of technology and globalization together. And competition unfolds in series of dynamic strategic interactions in four main areas. This is cost versus quality, timing and know-how. So when are we coming with the product or innovation or new technology? How we create barriers to entry, and also something we call deep pockets. So let's see them in more detail. So cost versus quality is a traditional way we compete. We could get into price wars, different ways of positioning based on quality and price. We could also take the middle path or try to cover all niches. Overall, we need to be really clear how we're creating value and what is the perceived value customers place in our product and what are they willing to pay for it. Timing and know-how, this is the second arena for hyper competition. The key thing here to understand is that companies with first mover skills achieve a timing advantage. So the ones that are the first to introduce something on the market actually usually are in a better position. But in order to do that, we really need to innovate and to have a know-how advantage. So this in itself puts a lot of different requirements in where we invest our money, what kind of people we hire. The third arena of hyper competition is developing high barriers to entry. So this could be done geographically, or we can build a geographic stronghold or target the stronghold of competitors in other countries. So there's something called guerrilla attacks, which are so the terminology here is that incumbents can make short-term counter responses to guerrilla attacks. So if we find ourselves subject to a guerrilla attack, we could have short-term counter responses, or we can respond by creating new hurdles for the invader. And I would say the second is much more, so if we think we're not in a defense position, but we put ourselves in kind of regroup and become the attacker, that's a much better, we potentially can be in better position. So as far as competitive advantage in today's world, in order to achieve a sustainable advantage, companies must seek a series of unsustainable advantages. So in other words, the overall advantage is a result of a series of activities which are not sustainable in itself, but all together ensure that we can sustain our competitive advantage. Hence, in this situation, the role of marketing is constantly innovation, new markets, new ways of attacking existing markets, and it requires us constantly to abandon the old and obsolete. And as I said, this is probably the most difficult because sometimes this old and obsolete means we need to disrupt even profitable strategies in order to make sure that we're ready for tomorrow. There's something we call the flagship firm. So the flagship firm is a collection of 5 partners. So it's about key suppliers, key customers, key consumers, selected competitors, and non-business infrastructure like universities, governments, trade unions, and so on, that can supply us with technology and intellectual property. So we make these new ways of collaboration, and such collaborations basically ensure that we can have really sustainable, I mean, if we do this right, we can have a more sustainable competitive advantage. So we see this used as a strategy by some big companies. Another strategy that's very interesting is the so-called blue ocean strategy. So according to, this came with a book, there's such book called Blue Ocean Strategy that I recommend to you to read. So according to this book, there are red oceans, which are existing markets where the players understand the rules. And we have blue oceans. These are markets or industries that do not currently exist. So basically, if we can create a blue ocean, we are really setting the trends and can really benefit from first mover advantage. A good example of this is Cirque du Soleil. So this is basically the circus of France, the biggest circus company in France, which was seeing a huge decline in sales because more and more, with the availability of other forms of entertainment, companies who are consumers, were not going to the circus as much. So they could have just disappeared step by step and just remained a very niche product. What they did instead of trying to survive in a red ocean, they created a blue ocean. So they completely redesigned their programs, and they started appearing with their circus performance in big event halls, even in opera houses. So And together with this move was so unique that they managed from really kind of mass market prices for circus. They went to very premium pricing for premium performance in premium outlets. So not only they created a new market, completely high, I mean, very high levels of profitability and pricing, and they continued to be, so they achieve such leadership position that they're not, it's very difficult to compete with them. So this is an example of similar with eBay and other companies. They completely changed how we do certain things, and they benefited immensely from this disruption. So we're gonna look at now the case of IKEA. 1 second. Have you read that case? Okay. So basically, IKEA is a very interesting company with a very interesting business model, which completely disrupted and changed how we buy furniture and how, in general, we our consumer habits and the value we place on the process of buying furniture. So one of the things there's a couple of things which are core. It's their business model. One is that they created, first of all, their furniture is very contemporary design, very much focused on users' needs. So not so much on design for the sake of design, but design for the sake of really utility, like creating real value for the needs of the customers. The second thing they did is, so they made the possible modern design to be available at low prices. That was the first. The second thing they did is they're sourcing furniture globally. So all their furnitures are produced across the world in many different places, and they can achieve really low prices in this way. Also, another unique thing is that the furniture you buy has an element that it comes with instructions, and you can yourself assemble it. Plus, probably again, one of the biggest inventions they made, and one of the reasons for their success, is their so-called flat pack kit. So basically, every furniture they sell is designed in a way that it can fit in a flat package, which means that it's very easy for them to transport. It's much cheaper to transport both the furniture which is produced across the world and then brought to the shops, as well as it's much easier for the consumers to buy the products and transport them with their own cars. While usual furniture producers, you need really big vehicles to transport. So this made it more convenient for consumers, but also reduced substantially the costs. So what's interesting with IKEA, they started as a Scandinavian company, and initially they really were focused on the Scandinavian way of doing things. Specifically, they came out of Sweden. But step by step, they started adapting. So they started as a completely ethnocentric company, and step by step, today they are more geocentric so in other words, they are adapting to the needs of certain markets. So for example, in Japan, initially they had an ethnocentric approach. They opened and they failed because their value proposition just didn't work on that market. But later, as demographic and economic trends changed Japan, customers started seeking alternative to paying high prices for quality goods, and IKEA was reintroduced and is today very successful. But for example, in Japan and in many other countries, they now offer home delivery and assembly. So this whole opportunity to assemble and transport your own furniture today has been adopted. So they widened their customers, the customer segments they service by offering these additional services. They also had specific challenges. For example, in India, there is a regulation according to which 1/3 of their retail sales has to come from products sourced locally. So they had to find local suppliers which can work according to the requirements and produce the products they need. So that was a huge challenge, but they successfully dealing with it and really growing in India. Also, they're looking to use the experience they gathered there in other markets. So there's also a number of here examples in this case in terms of their leadership challenges and their drive for sustainabilities. So for example, so each CEO they had a specific focus on improving the company in certain areas of, for example, we're giving Anders Dalvik stress-free areas of improvement: product assortment, customer service, and product availability. So each one of them had a specific focus. And it's interesting, they actually are known, we're not going to go into the details of it today, but actually they're known for very different organizational culture. And an example of that is the fact that, for example, Mikael Olsen, who was the CEO in 2009, he pioneered the idea of home visits. So he himself did it, but also expected other executives to do it, like visiting customers and really seeing how they use the furniture and how what do they need in their lives and how it can be improved, basically. So this is a really good example of staying very close to the customer and continuing to innovate in order to satisfy their needs. There's further here examples. Sorry, can you mute yourself? Thank you. There's further examples of how IKEA had to adapt to local environment. For example, European-style drinking glasses were considered too small in America. Also, mattresses and sheets were not the right size. So if you read the case, you'll see how step by step from a very ethnocentric company, they now have very different products and policies according in the different countries in the world. And as here one of the executives said, people have needs to be met. They need wardrobes, offers, kitchens, and the most important thing is to meet those needs in the most sustainable way possible. So this quote actually is a result of some critique that IKEA was facing in terms of sustainability. Similarly to the case we discussed for fast fashion, IKEA is also known for kind of fast fashion in the furniture industry. So a lot of the furniture they produce is relatively quite cheap. So people buy and throw the furniture much more often. They wouldn't repair it the way they do with quality furniture, or they wouldn't keep it for a long time. They just throw it out. So obviously this is an issue as far as sustainability. But the response of the company is that it's important to satisfy the needs of customers in the most sustainable way. So we're doing a lot of efforts to produce in sustainable ways, while also meeting the needs of customers. So there's a number of interesting questions here that you could think about. So this the question of whether we're a global firm or a transnational firm. I would say that they started as a global firm and they're moving to a transnational now. I mean, they are a transnational firm now. Yeah, and there's the whole question also, as I said, of their overall orientation, which according to me is now geocentric. Plus, this case indicates in a good way the ability how they achieved cost focus according to Porter's generic strategy, Porter's model, which we discuss now in terms of as a strategic tool. Okay, so we're gonna stop now.